This is Charlie Mato-Toyela with another How to Make and How to Play the Native American Flute video series. This time we're going to work on one that I've had a few requests on how to make, and that's the drone flute. Anybody that's interested in drone flutes, if you look up the Kalima culture, it's spelled with a C, the Kalima Indian culture actually made drones out of clay, but there were some really neat ones. They're from Central America, so yeah, there have been examples of Native Americans making drones before 20 years ago. Today we're going to make these out of cedar. I get a lot of requests for cedar and pine drones. Pine actually makes a great sounding flute, and coincidentally for a lot of you folks that don't have lots of fancy tools at home, this is a pine 1x3 that I got from Lowe's or Home Depot, or from your local lumber yard. You know, you can find these anywhere. They're allegedly 1 inch thick, which is really supposed to be 3/4 of an inch thick, which actually is more like a 1/2 inch thick, but they'll still work. You can follow the same steps and procedures we're doing with this, except for instead of using a router table and a router to make the path for the flute, you'll be using either a knife or a gouge or even a Dremel. Dremel works great. I had one friend that used to always make flutes with Dremels. He wore out Dremel heads like nobody's business, but he didn't spend hundreds of dollars on a router, so it is an option, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Once again, just a 1x3 here. So these, on the other hand, are cedar. A little bit on the upper end. It was actually a 2x12, I think, that I've cut down and reshaped into the size that I needed to be in. And you'll see what we're going to do with these guys, which is basically the same procedure on all of them. I've taken my G flute that I used for a pattern, and basically, if you see where the track area is, you know, I've drawn a line for the separation of this mouth air chamber and the mouthpiece area and this flute chamber down here, and it goes all the way down to the end. And instead of leaving it solid on the end like I do on my flutes that I turn on the lathe, we're going to go ahead and route it all the way through, which is kind of convenient. You'll be able to see where center is, which is very handy. But we'll do that in just a second. This is one that I've already marked. When you mark the lines for the partition inside, you need to mark this side and this side, and you'll find out why in just a minute. The trickiest part for most people, and this is something you might can use on other flute making ventures, is setting your router bed. I have discovered that there are people who sell jigs that go and, you know, space your bits for this size, for that size hole, and this, that, and the other. Wow. There's just crazy business out there these days. What I do, got a little dollar caliper here. It's actually, I think it cost me 99 cents, Harbor Freight. And the width of my cove or core box bit that I have here is 3/4, which is actually about 19 millimeters. And so what I want to do is take the 19 millimeters, cut it in half, which is going to be 9.5 millimeters, which is the height that it's going to need to be set at, which means that right now it's just a little bit too high. And a little high is okay, because when you sand the mating surfaces of the flute down, a lot of times you wind up making it a little bit shallower anyway. What we're going to do right now is the good old eyeball method. One of my favorites. I use it for just about everything I do, believe it or not. If this thing was going to be some type of rocket ship, then maybe I would worry about getting it exact, but the eyeball method works great. And the easiest way, let me find my pencil here, to do the eyeball method is just kind of mark where the side of the bit is going to run, and then flip it over and mark it on the other side. And those of you who couldn't see exactly what I was doing, let me go back. We've got that guy about in the middle, which is not where we need him. You don't want a very big space between your two flute chambers, between the flute and the drone chamber. You want it to be kind of a simple, let me see, thing here. So you want to keep the space a little bit. I don't know if you can see this on the camera too well, but there's my line, and that represents the separation. So that's about where I want to have it for making this guy right here be the size and shape and everything he needs to be. I'm just going to set that now that I know where it's at. There's another way to check it too, which is actually the other eyeball method that I have used forever and a day. And the other way to check the width is actually just to take a little scrap board and run it through there. The trick is the scrap board has to be the size of your piece of wood you're making your flutes on. So, you guys want to put your earmuffs on at home? Little joke there. You know, I could see it, but it just didn't look right. Anybody see me bump that guide whenever I put it on? I've been eyeballing them for a while, so I can do it really quick. I just like to make sure you guys know how to do it. Then I go and bump my guide. This would make a good outtake reel. Can get dusty quick, can it? So what we have done here is we have made a piece of wood that actually is about, let me see how wide this thing is. So this one is not a 2x3. The 2x3 needs to be a little bit narrower to make it work right, but this guy here is 2¼ inches wide. Like I say, this ain't rocket science. I didn't measure it beforehand, but hey, look how straight and pretty those little tracks look. You only need about 1/4 inch spacer in between the two flute halves. And if you noticed, at one exciting moment there, this beautiful piece of wood decided it didn't want to stay stuck to the side there anymore and went pow and flung off. Luckily, it didn't know my flute foo was in order, and I kind of kept from getting hit in the face. But that's some of the dangers of doing woodworking. And one thing else you might want to do, so let me grab my square. When you're just starting making your first ones of these, you might want to take a pencil on the inside. That way you can see, if I get close enough here, you might be able to see that this chamber is a little bit too low to match up with this other chamber. Does it really matter? A little bit, you know, not, like I said, I can't stress enough, this ain't rocket science. But if you get that part right from the beginning, it may actually help you in the long run, because you won't be tuning two flutes separately, you'll be tuning them together at the same time. And sometimes getting this guy in tune the first time is really a lot better than having to go back and redo it later. And in the case that you do, there's actually one gentleman, I can't remember his name, but one guy that makes drones, and when he's got his finished drone and it's all smoothed and rounded, has holes and everything in it, it's actually slanted like this, where he's tuned one side more than the other or what have you. Some people do it on purpose. Some people might put like a G flute, or rather a D flute over here and an A flute over there, because the D and the A have some level of harmonies with each other. The first, let's see, the first 3 notes on the A flute are the same as the last 3 notes on the D flute, something like that. So I'd have to go back and look at the notes, but pretty much, that's the way it works. And like I say, some people will make a drone flute that has a short one over here and a long one over there and what have you. I like to keep mine in the same key. It's just, I don't know. Simpler is always better. So we've got that, and let's see if we're going to be able to work enough out of them to make a G flute. If it's not a G, I can always make it an A, but it looks like that's enough to make a G flute with, although I may do some repair on the end down there. But I'm going to go back and clean these areas up so that the beginnings of each flute chamber match with this line, and then we'll put it together. We'll drill the holes out from the inside on one side. One thing you want to consider when you're drilling the holes out for the inside, which you'll see next, is do you want to play the flute side on the right hand, or do you want to play it on the left hand? Most people play it on the right hand side and have the drone chamber on the left hand side. That works great for me because usually I put 5-hole flutes. I have 2 holes up here, 3 holes down there, and then I have a thumb hole in the back on the drone side over here at the bottom, usually, no matter which one it is, because that one will always be in tune. And sometimes, like if it's a G or an F sharp, I might put a thumb hole up here on the drone chamber as well, just so that I can have it go that extra octave. But we'll talk about that on the next part of this video. So if you guys want to just stay tuned, I'm going to get some things squared away in the shop here and get started on drilling this guy out.